Hail to the podcast. Summer is here. We're going to be talking about some of the changes that have occurred for Michigan football, some freshmen that have arrived at camp, a couple transfers, and the impact that's going to have on some depth chart battles, including at quarterback. We're going to get into it. Join us now. Welcome in. Hail to the podcast, brought to you by Maize Blue Review. We cover Michigan for the Rivals Network, which means you can find us at michigan.rivals.com. Josh and I had our episode recently explaining the On3 Rivals merger. For now, I'm just going to keep announcing it that way. July 1st, we'll have a lot more clarity on the branding for the team site and such. But the most important takeaway, Maize Blue Review is not going anywhere except to the On3 platform. And we'll have more resources and features for you guys. Again, Josh and I have a video up on that. So I am joined today by our Mr. Do-It-All whiz, Brock Heilig, who is, again, always in a different location, some type of book storage, it appears, today. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, nothing much. It's been a good start to the summer. I hope everyone had a good Memorial Day. I spent some time out on the lake today, so
attaboy.
It was good. It was a good time celebrating all those that fought for our country and gave their lives for our freedom, and it's a great holiday today.
Well said. I don't think I can top that, so I'll go with that as well. I hope everybody did have some good time with friends and family. All right, like you said, summer is here, right? Michigan football still 96 days away, I believe. Who's counting? Me. I want football badly. And although there hasn't been any, big practices or anything, there has been some changes since spring break ended in terms of some players coming in, some intel we've gathered. So we thought it'd be a good chance to kind of go through those intel notes and some depth chart things. Obviously, recruiting is picking up like crazy. We're excited. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Myself and Aiden are going to go live. Who's Got Next is back. We'll have all our recruiting updates there. And of course, if you're not a subscriber already, now's a good time to join michigan.rivals.com. Aiden and Seth have just flooded the board with visit notes, upcoming visits, scouting reports, you name it. So plenty of recruiting stuff coming. But let's get into the 2025 Michigan Wolverines. I hate to start at quarterback because we always do, but things start at quarterback. Mikey Keene is healthy. He is throwing and expected to be a full participant throughout the summer into fall and be ready to be a part of this team in the fall. I don't know if the hindsight game really matters at this point. I personally think Bryce would probably still be in a pretty good driver's seat position, but he is, because it was just him and Jaden Davis throwing all spring. It feels inevitable to me that he's going to start, but Mikey Keene is around. So how are you looking at, is Mikey going to be able to push Bryce? Does Bryce have to slip up? And then I guess Mikey versus Jaden Davis, which I think is probably the bigger conversation, frankly. But where do you think things stand now that we do have the veteran transfer quarterback throwing?
Yeah, I think, obviously the addition of Mikey Keene, at first, I think a lot of people were expecting more for him to come in and really push to be the starter, alongside Underwood, and the battle there would be really intense. But I feel like at this point in time, May 26th here, like you said, 96 days away from the start of the season, I think we're looking at a pretty clear 1-2-3 for Michigan in terms of, in my opinion, I think you, Trevor, would agree. It's looking like Bryce Underwood is the number one. And for me, at least, Mikey Keene has got to be number two. I mean, a fifth year quarterback who's played a lot of football. He's been around. He knows what he's doing. He's the clear number two. And then you've got Jaden Davis at three for me. He redshirted last year, and he didn't even get to see any playing time in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I mean, there was there was no better opportunity for him to see the field and get in there and make some plays, and Michigan couldn't get him out there. So I do feel like him going into his second year at Michigan now, it's just, not the level of football that Mikey Keene has been accustomed to playing for now 4 years, going on his fifth year. Right. So that's where I'm at. I do feel like it's a pretty clear 1-2-3. And I don't unless something drastically changes in fall camp, I really don't foresee that changing. Of course, things can change, right? You never know in terms of injuries or, I always refer to this from last year's fall camp, but everyone thought they knew what the offensive line was going to look like. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it gets blown up at the very end of fall camp due to a couple of injuries and some other things. So there's always things that can happen, but I do feel like for me, it's pretty clear in terms of Underwood, Keene, and Davis.
Yeah. Trying to find a spot to disagree with you just to have a conversation, but I don't. Look, I think Underwood, the thing for me with, the idea of Mikey Keene starting and Underwood eventually taking over, what would that even look like? Right? You've got your first 4 games of the season before the bye. So does Mikey Keene have to cost you football games before you to go to Bryce Underwood? What if he goes 4-0? Are you benching him after he's 4-0? I mean, Clemson made an incredible decision when they had Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant years. I think that's everybody's like dream scenario. I've talked about with Bryce. I think what Bryce needs to learn or accomplish can only happen from playing football, right? I don't think we're talking about that a guy that's got to develop more physically or maturity or any of that, right? He's just got to go out there and make the mistakes and learn from them, right? So I've always kind of felt like Bryce was going to be the guy anyway. Look, I have a lot of positive things to say about Jane Davis because we've heard a lot of positive things about him. He didn't bail when Bryce came, and he's got a great relationship with Bryce, and he is showing a willingness to learn and, et cetera. And your average fan brings it up. The throwing motion, we heard a ton about that. In some practice clips we saw, it looked better. And even during the spring game, the one thing I said, like, I don't want to pull too much away from the spring game, but you and I talked about when Jane Davis got under pressure in a couple moments, he just reverted back, right, to that old motion. And I just don't think if you've got a healthy Mikey Keene who can drive you home if Bryce gets hurt in the middle of the game or, God forbid, you need him to start a game or whatever. Yeah, I struggle with seeing Davis being ready to start. I think he's probably at that QB3 spot. I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, and one more point for me on the quarterbacks is Michigan's really benefited in the years past from having weak non-conference schedules. Except for last year, they obviously played Texas at home and lost, but they don't have that luxury this year. They got to go week 2 to Norman, and like you've brought up before, it's probably going to be a night game, right? At an SEC stadium, going to be on ESPN, probably 7:30 kickoff, right? I mean, if Michigan were to go with that method of, you'd play Mikey Keene through the 4 easy non-conference games, you win the game by 30 and get Underwood in there to get some reps and get him prepared for Big Ten play. They can't do that because are you going to put out Mikey Keene against Oklahoma? And then if you do, when are you bringing Bryce in? Right. So I think if Michigan has any intention of starting Bryce at any point this season, they just got to do it right away. Right.
Agreed.
And let him work through the hiccups or anything that there may be against Oklahoma. Even if it might sound crazy, but even if it means losing the game, because it's a losable game, right? It's not some gimme going into Oklahoma at night. Even if it means losing the game, getting Bryce Underwood the experience that he needs to be able to go in there in those high pressure moments, I think is huge. And if they do end up going into Oklahoma and losing, I don't think that's going to hurt their chances. It's not going to hurt their chances at a Big Ten title, and it will only marginally impact their chances at a playoff spot. So I do feel like if Michigan has any thought of even starting Underwood at all this season, it needs to be right away.
I agree. And the conversation too, like I fully expected the coaches to do everything they could to tone down the Bryce hype and talk about a battle. And Moore did say there's going to be competition. He threw that out there, but he mentioned Bryce and Jaden Davis, right? Like, and that might be where the Keene injury has kind of forced his hand there, but like, they're not even trying to talk about it. Like he's not the guy, you know what I mean? So, and I'm with you. I'd just rather have him there at Oklahoma. Once he committed, the higher end, not necessarily a shot at, Keene, but like a lot of people thought Miller Moss was coming, right? I don't know what the level of QB would have to be for it to be like, oh yeah, that guy's for sure starting over Bryce. I don't think Keene was that to begin with, and then he got hurt. So,
Yep.
And look, there's a difference between hype and praise, right? I keep saying I don't know what Bryce Underwood's going to do. I've never seen him play college football. I think there's a lot of indicators and things that we normally look at to judge that are very, very positive for him. I don't know. I've seen him throw picks in high school that were bad. He's probably going to throw some bad picks, right?
Yeah.
Can he do it at times that don't cost him games? Can he learn from it? Somebody brought up a good point, Juju. Your defense is elite. Your kicker's elite, right? The floor is what the offense was last year, right? I think we've talked about that. So if I've improved my offensive coordinator and other pieces, whatever, but just in general, we've said, I don't know if we've done this on the show or not. Just yes or no, or if you want to get into it a little bit, fine. But Washington, if Bryce Underwood is the quarterback, does Michigan beat Washington?
Yep.
Illinois?
Yeah.
Indiana?
Yeah.
There you go. Michigan's 10-2 and in the playoff.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So that's the expectation for me this year. Right. It's just that the defense is largely back. I know Mason Graham, there's some changes from depth to elite guys, but like I expect the defense to be elite. I think the running game might be better. Right. And the offensive line should improve as well. And this is what I want to get into next. We've talked about some things that have been said privately, but the players are saying it publicly now too. Just the culture wasn't good, right? I think the coaches made some mistakes. You alluded to the fall camp decisions, maybe putting too much into that, starting Dom when Crippen got hurt, etc. And then we're finding out these guys weren't really talking a ton. That maybe there was some clickiness on the group, just against everything that has made Michigan successful the last few seasons, right? And you come into this year, and without getting into it too much, these guys are living together. There's like 2 different residents for most of the offensive linemen. They're going out together. They're hanging out together. It's a much better vibe. There's this, and even Keene was asked about the competition was very much like, yeah, we're all here to do whatever we need to do to help. Like he said, a very good answer, I thought, right? So the offensive line's doing and saying a lot of the right things. We leave spring with Sherrone basically telling us, hey, Crippen, El Hadi, Sprague, go ahead and write him in pen. Those guys are all but locks to start. The left tackle, look in the portal a little bit, don't find anybody. It feels like either they really prefer Link at guard or they just don't want him to start at left tackle. I think the vibe is Andrew Babalola is the guy. They want to win that job. So then you get into this other guard spot. Lawrence Hatter, Fair State transfer, has arrived. When he was initially recruited, he said, man, I'm coming in to win that left guard job, but I'm going to play wherever they want me to play, and I'm coming to start. So there's an interesting element there where you've got El Hadi at left guard, where he's probably more comfortable where he had been previously, or at least that's the thought. Afobe's had all spring at right guard because Hatter wasn't in yet. But there's a scenario Evan Link's out there to maybe play right guard. If Hatter comes in and wins a guard job, well, now you've got an interesting situation because he played left guard the last couple of years at Ferris. El Hadi played right guard last year. Then you've got those guys swapped. Do you swap them back? I mean, you get into a weird spot. But anyway, we've added another name to the competition with Lawrence Hatter. I guess he could technically play left tackle too. I haven't heard that as an option per se. To your point, we didn't really have Evan Link starting at right tackle last year either, so who knows? But we've talked about it a little bit. But Hatter coming in, what are your vibes with this offensive line? And then now that, like, again, some of these guys like in the trenches and some other places have kind of been pretty open about how rough things were last year.
Yeah, I think it was Giovanni El Hadi who recently was on In the Trenches or some podcast and basically came out and said there weren't a lot of guys who had been around and done that last year, and that's kind of what led to the struggles that the offensive line had, and then that leads to worse quarterback play and things like that. But what intrigues me about the offensive line for this year is that if Andrew Babalola does go and win the left tackle spot, you're going to have a true freshman quarterback and a true freshman left tackle. Arguably, definitely the quarterback most important position on the field, and you could argue that left tackle, the one protecting the quarterback's blind side, is right up there at
probably second most. Yeah,
second most important on at least the offense, right? So I mean, you're going to have if Babalola does win the job, you're going to have 2 true freshmen as two of the more important pieces on the offense in general, and maybe on the whole team. But that'll be interesting to see. But you're right, Lawrence Hatter coming in, competing with Nathan Afobe and potentially Evan Link if they move him into guard. It's a lot going on, but I do think Michigan's in a good spot. Like you mentioned, Sherrone Moore seems pretty confident in Giovanni El-Hadi and Greg Crippen and Andrew Sprague. They're pretty much penciled in as starters. So it'll all be about figuring out what is the best combination, whether it means, Babalola wins the left tackle job, and then you have the other three in Hatter, Afobe, and Link compete for potentially right guard, or like you said, El-Hadi and Hatter switching spots. It's going to be a lot going on, but I do think it bodes well for Michigan that they have 60% of the offensive line essentially going into summer penciled in as starters. They've only got to figure out two more. So it's probably not the best situation to have three guys competing for one spot and then left tackle basically wide open, if you could call it that. But I do think it's good for Michigan that they've got three guys that they know will be starters come the first game.
Yeah, I think, and that's a really good point. Crippen, who it sounds like after, again, wasn't pleased with how things were handled last year, probably fairly, seems to be in a good mindset. El-Hadi feels like he's in a good mindset, more comfortable at left guard. Andrew Sprague probably would have pushed for more reps at right tackle sooner had he been healthy all year. I know he only had the one bowl game, but we know what his potential is. He's probably starting at right tackle until he goes pro, right? The dude's an absolute stud. You're not concerned there. Kwame's got a few comments here about Babalola won't win it. Evan Link was so good the last 3 games. Look, I got attacked last year for liking Link too much at the end of the year because we were defending him so much against some of the hate. So I agree. I do think he played really well towards the back half of the year. That Texas game skews a lot of things for him. But this isn't even just like intel that we're reacting to at this point. I don't even have to read between the lines, right? As soon as that portal opened, Michigan was active with 2 starting left tackles, right? When Moore has been very candid about this offensive line battle, he's been pretty clear. We just talked about, we know who the 3 starters are, and we know their praise for Babalola. They've talked about that being a competition. So I just have to react to that, right? So it's clear they're concerned about Link being at left tackle or just vastly prefer him at guard. One of those two. We've already talked about that initial hesitancy with Babalola because of what we were told coming in, that it might take him a year. I think that's probably my hang up, aside from the fact that he's a freshman at left tackle, right? Like, that's a tough thing to do, but guy that hasn't played a ton of football, physically he's there. I heard he was there. I've seen him in person. He's there. It's crazy. But yeah, on the back end of it, like, dude, we're talking about, like, of course you start Bryce Underwood. Of course you do. But then, Babalola, I don't know. Yeah. This does feel like a good problem to have compared to last year, though.
For sure.
I think we felt like, I don't think they're as deep this year, potentially. Like, we thought they had 10 guys. I don't know that they have 10, but I do feel a lot better about who's going to be potentially starting. And Ty Haywood is joining this summer as well. Not a guy I expect to compete for a starting job right away. Same reason as Babalola, but he missed all of spring. There's a scenario, though, where Haywood probably ends up at right guard long term, right? And you've got Blake Frazier, who's going to be healthy as well. Another note coming to the summer. He's going to be ready to go. I'm looking at next year in my mind. The sooner Babalola starts at left tackle, maybe the better, because he's going to be the left tackle of the future, right? Blake Frazier, either left guard or right guard. I've thought of him as like a Zinter guard or Zinter clone for a while. Ty Haywood, probably the other guard spot. Sprague, you have at right tackle, and Jake Gardner is going to take over at center next year. So get this year right. Get these young guys some reps, and man, this feels like the last hump before your recruiting really starts to pay off.
Yeah. And for me, it's going to be all about how much Michigan is willing to let these young guys work out the kinks. I mean, we talked about it with Underwood, but if they're going to start Babalola at left tackle, I haven't studied up on Oklahoma's pass rushers. I don't know what their defense looks like. But I keep looking at that week 2 game thinking, okay, how much trust is Michigan going to have in these young guys to go out there and get it done against Oklahoma with a raucous crowd, a big SEC environment? It's going to be really interesting to see. And I do think if they end up going with Babalola, you got to have a backup plan of some sort in case you have a repeat of what happened last year against Texas when Evan Link just got torched, right? I mean, you just
he gave up some pressures. We're not picking on the guy. It was a rough game.
Right. So, I mean, it's going to be all about how much are they wanting to look toward the future? Because like you said, odds are that Andrew Babalola and Bryce Underwood are going to be the left tackle and quarterback for the foreseeable future. At least 26 and 27, you could probably assume, right? So, like you mentioned, getting Babalola in there early as a freshman, letting him develop would be huge for the future, but it's about really balancing the future versus the present. And I think that's what the Michigan coaches are going to have to deal with this year.
Yeah, you never have a skip year, right? And you want to give yourself the best chance to win at all times, but it's kind of hard not to think about that, the way things will play out, right? It's going to be interesting to see for sure. I think the groups, the O-line, will the O-line be better? I guess that's the question. We just talked about if the floor is last year. I look at what these guys are saying in terms of the continuity amongst them and the communication, right? The communication wasn't there, right? Those things. Guys coming back with more experience. We've talked about Juan Castillo being added. We've talked about the benefit of Biff Poggi allowing Moore to spend more time there. I just feel like the O-line is going to be better. It feels like it's going to be better. Whatever formation they finish with, right? And to your point about, Link was getting cooked in that Texas game. I think a big frustration with a Kirk Campbell versus, I know we all hated when Michigan would come out in those 15 script plays and look like they were going to be explosive and then instantly be conservative again to win a football game. But they did what they had to. Whether that was Penn State where they throw the one ball in the second half that doesn't count as an attempt because there was interference on it, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. Or even before that, bringing in the extra blockers, right? Like going big, adapting. I would hope it's as simple as that if Babalola is starting and there's a guy that's has his number early, that maybe Marlin Klein is on that side and helping out. Maybe CJ Hester or one of these new running backs that was brought in and has good pass pro. Maybe they're lining up over there. Maybe we're running away from that person and moving the play. These really simple things that just didn't seem to happen. There just weren't adjustments last year.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I do feel like the O-line is going to improve no matter what. I feel better. And I feel like I can trust the staff a little bit more in terms of their decision-making because Sherrone Moore has just shown a willingness to admit where a problem is and immediately attack it and try to fix it. So that's where my confidence is at. Is O-line better no matter what? Or, I'm still concerned because I think it's got to be good. That's the heart of the offense, right? But
right, yeah. I don't know if I'm ready to say that it's going to be definitively better than last year's offensive line no matter what. I think it has a really good chance to be better, but I need to see what Michigan does at left tackle and at right guard before I really make any final judgments, right? And I'll need to see it in game action against New Mexico before I determine, before I write anything off for the rest of the year or make any final decisions.
No,
so
proclamation right now. Go.
I
echo my opinion in that again, by the way. Cook New Mexico. I don't want any concerns about the playbook. I don't want to hear anything about that. Come out there. I want Hawaii JJ starting game. Like just let him go off, right? Real quick before we move on, there's been a little bit of a debate, and I just want to clarify. Neither one of us is saying Jaden Davis is a bad quarterback. Jaden Davis is not a bad quarterback. That's another guy that we got a lot of crap for defending during his recruiting cycle and even when he came in, because so much of what I liked about him was the intangible stuff, his leadership, his character, the things that are shining through now. that he's been recruited over, right? He won state championships. He can make some tough throws. But I'm sorry, his throwing mode. They've said they're working on his throwing motion. It's not good, guys. Like It's not a debatable thing, and it's more concerning that it's gotten better, right? But there's a thing with muscle memory, right? And sometimes I don't care if it's golf or whatever sport you play, when pressure, literally pressure in terms of football, where like guys are coming in at him, but sometimes we go back to muscle memory. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did a couple times in the spring game. And what he does is he drops the ball literally below his hip. It's almost like the arm is completely locked straight down. And then he does a full 270-degree circle, brings it all the way back and over. And it just takes too long. It's something they're working on. I think it's something he'll improve at. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I don't know what his future here will be. I'm glad he's still here. I think he has a future at quarterback. But just going into this year, I think the experience of Mikey Keene would win out over QB2. That's all we're saying. So You guys are more than welcome to debate and have your own opinion on that. But I just want to clarify that I don't think he's a bad quarterback. So running backs. It feels weird because I was really, really excited about a Cole Mellings, Donovan Edwards duo. And I feel very underwhelmed by the end of the year. And that has nothing to do with a little to do with the players. Edwards still had some of the vision things, but generally speaking, most of my frustration was how they were used. Mm-hmm. You and I had multiple conversations about Mullings being the lead guy in the drive and Edwards being the change of pace, what that looks like. No need to rehash. It does feel like the running back room is going to be better this year. I think Justice Haynes is a monster addition. I was excited about Jordan Marshall being RB1 anyway before Haynes was added. I think those two are elite. I wish Ben Hall would have stayed. I'm glad he went to UNC. I think that's a good landing spot for him. Jasper Parker is the new addition. He arrives in the summer. But they also added, I said CJ Hester already. Why can I can never remember Princeton. What's his name?
John Volker.
Thank you. He's the one that's got really, really good pass protection numbers. So there was some thought he might play into that. You and I have talked about RB3 and how little or most that role could matter or not. Like every year we debate who it's going to be, and then they get like 20 carries on the year, right? But 3 new guys in that room add depth after, the departure of Hall. Where are you, I guess? Similar question in terms of confidence level. And do you think any of the 3 guys, we saw Micah Kaapana in the spring game. We obviously saw Kutzdahl get some good carries. Do you think they're the RB3 conversation where they're going to get on the field, or do you think any of these new 3 guys coming in are going to have an impact on the rotation?
Well, I remember the last time the 3 of us did a podcast, 2 of us and Josh, we were on
a year ago.
I think it was a year ago, but I think it was in the spring. And you were asking Trevor, do you think this was before Michigan added Hester or Volker. You were asking, do you think Michigan needs to go after another running back, or do you think they're set with Haynes and Marshall? And I was of the opinion that they were set. This could have been before Ben Hall transferred out, so we may have been looking at for Michigan Haynes, Marshall, and Hall.
Okay,
and then Hall left, right? But still, I feel like Michigan was set. I forget the numbers. I looked at it one time, and I put it on our message boards or something, but running back 3 historically, like in recent history at Michigan, running back 3 does not get a lot of carries. It's literally like 3 or 4 per game. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, that's been boosted because Michigan in the last few years has been ahead in a lot of these games late in the second half. So RB3 then gets put in and gets some garbage time carries, right? So I don't think there's a huge role for an RB3. And I to be honest, wasn't sure what Michigan was doing, adding CJ Hester from UMass and John Volker from Princeton. I don't see it. I don't think either of them is going to come close to competing with Haynes or Marshall. So, at this point, RB3, it could be any of these guys. You mentioned it: Volker, Hester, Parker, Kaapana. Right? There are so many guys they're in that conversation. Even Cusdahl had a good spring game, like you mentioned, but I don't see how any of those four guys that I mentioned are going to be used and really impact winning for Michigan. I think it's going to be Haynes and Marshall, and if Michigan happens to be up by 2, 3, 4 touchdowns in a game, then sure, you throw one of the other guys in there and give them some run. But I think I'd be shocked if any running backs on Michigan's roster not named Justice Haynes or Jordan Marshall ran for more than, I don't know, say 250 yards this season, I'd be surprised.
That'd be quite a bit. Like I'm looking at 2021 when you had Haskins, Corum, and Edwards. Like in my mind, it's like maybe that's similar. Haskins got a lot more carries than Corum. Corum was a little banged up at the end of the year, obviously, but even then, Donaven Edwards only had 35 carries his freshman year, and that's as a 5-star running back. I mean, obviously, if somebody's hurt, that's a completely different conversation. I'd like to see more blowouts this year, so these guys, especially Jasper Parker, potentially get some run. Marshall didn't get enough run last year that you probably would have liked to see. He was hurt, ends up preserving his red shirt, but Parker's probably in heavy rotation next year, assuming Haynes has a good year and moves on, right? I think, man, I don't know. This is one I don't know, and I'm not getting a lot of word on either, and we probably won't till fall camp. Haynes and Marshall are very similar players. They're different, but they're very similar. So it doesn't feel like right now, at least one of those guys is for sure every first down or short yardage or going to affect the play calling in any way, right? So maybe a guy like Hester has a chance to be a short yardage guy and carve out that kind of role. Or, I brought up with Volker the pass pro, that maybe that's a situation where 3rd and long, he is the guy back there. I wonder how much they'll run Bryce. Yeah, we can get to that in a second. I don't know. I'm so much more concerned with Marshall and Haynes both having the potential to be 1,000-yard rushers. I genuinely think that. Good point, Steve. Micah Kaapana brings speed that, is in terms of a spell back. Maybe they use them on returns this year. I don't know. But they're not going to take carries away from Haynes and Marshall. They're not, So in terms of Bryce, I wonder how much they'll run Bryce too. He's not afraid to run the quarterback, but I don't know. I think Bryce will have the freedom to run when he sees openings because he's so big and strong that like you don't mind him getting down the field and then obviously sliding when he can. I don't think there's going to be a lot of designed calls for him though. And it'll be interesting because as much as the play action will be used, will there be true RPO? And will Bryce have a chance to run? I don't know. We'll see. He's mobile enough, but I don't know that he's going to run a ton.
I think it's going to be very similar to how Michigan used JJ in the running game, where, like you said, if there's an opening and you can pick up a first down for 10 yards, 15 yards, yeah, by all means, go. And Michigan will probably want him to slide, right? They're not going to want him out there just lowering his shoulder and trying to make something out of nothing. But if he can pick up a first down, pick up a few yards, keep the defense honest, then by all means go. But I don't, like you said, I don't think they're going to be drawing up design runs for Bryce Underwood to carry the ball. I don't see that being a part of the offense at all. I think it'll be very similar to how Michigan used JJ in the run game.
What I do want to see, if you are going to run RPO, please be real.
Yeah.
I am so sick of these designed RPOs where the QB has no liberty whatsoever to choose to keep it. Because how many times do we go back and go, oh my gosh, if Davis Warren would have kept it, he's got this whole lane, and you just know he wasn't allowed to. So why are you wasting the time to pretend you're getting to the mesh point and you're going to hand it off anyway? Ugh. But I think you're limiting Bryce if you don't run him. Yeah, I know he has the skill. Again, I'll just be interested to see what Chip does. You know, you got Haynes is coming from an offense in Alabama where I think Milrow had 150 carries last year. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I guess last year at the peak of orgy hype, I thought he would get like 5 carries a game, and that'd be enough to get like 25 to 45 yards or whatever, maybe something like that. But I wouldn't run him much more than that. I just don't see the benefit in it. Not when I have Haynes and Marshall.
Right.
Personally, I don't know what he would bring, but
yeah,
who's he going to be throwing? Oh, go ahead. Do you got more?
No, I was just going to say, I agree.
We agree too much.
He is the future. I mean, you can't go out there and draw up design runs for your true freshman quarterback. You just can't. You can't do it. You can't do it. You have probably one of the better running back tandems in the country, and I don't care how talented Bryce Underwood is. You cannot just throw him out there and draw him up for 10 carries a game. You can't do it.
And again, if you trust him in true RPO, then I'm all for that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm fine with that. I'm trying to look up. I don't remember how many rushing yards he had last year. 600, over 600 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns.
Underwood?
Pretty good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know he ran it quite a bit last year. Like Juju brings it up, but we'll see. The wide receiver debate. I know everybody wanted another receiver in the portal. We've beat that subject to death at this point. They are obviously very high on Donaven McCulley, and by they I mean everyone, the players, the coaches, everybody's really high on him. Looks like he has re-earned the number 1 jersey that he wore everywhere else, and he'll potentially be wearing it here, which, all right, man, if you want more pressure, go ahead, right? I've shared my opinion on this. I think there's just so many bodies that in Michigan will get to a point where there's going to be less players, but more, I don't know what term I want to use, but like, who's going to play. We've got new Jacob Washington joining in the summer from a recruit, and then the UMass transfer, Anthony Simpson. I don't expect Washington to see the field because we've already talked about whether a Browder or Andrew Marsh or even a Channing Goodwin will see the field. But, he's obviously a future guy that brings some size. That's what the staff has been obsessed with in the portal and recruiting, is more size on the outside. But Anthony Simpson, Semaj gave another guy that gave some really honest comments about last year and how he was used in the offense. I agree with him 100%. We were saying it all year. Like, that's not how you use Semaj. I don't get it. But I don't see Simpson seeing the field. I know he brings experience. I can't necessarily put my finger on it. Maybe it's because I got burned by CJ Charleston usage last year. Or maybe it's because I know Chip Kelly. There it is. Chip Lindsey. Gross. I've done it a few times already. I know Chip Lindsey uses the tight end in the slot a lot. I don't know what my hesitation is there, but I don't think Washington's going to see the field this year. I don't think Simpson's going to have a huge impact. I'm still at McCulley, Moore, Goodwin, Morgan, Marsh. Like, somebody from that group's got to be the solid wide receiver too. And then honestly, with tight ends, the wide receiver 3 is probably not even that big of a deal. But I need big time production from 2 guys. But where are you at? And then we can keep throwing out names: Kendrick Bell, Peyton O'Leary. There's so many names.
There are. And that's something we've talked about all off season, right? Is there's a good dozen guys that could potentially be in the mix for Michigan at wide receiver. It seems like Donaven McCulley is the number 1 guy. He's got the number 1 jersey. He seems to be the guy whose name is brought up most, right? After that, it's kind of like this hodgepodge of guys just kind of hanging around. No one really being a huge threat to any defense, in my opinion. And you're right. I mean, if we're talking about Anthony Simpson in particular here, because he's the one who's coming in the summer, you're right. I mean, CJ Charleston coming in from Youngstown State last year, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had 1 reception the whole year.
1 reception last year.
1 reception the entire season. And he did get hurt in the Indiana game and didn't play the rest of the season, so it wasn't a full year. But still, 1 reception is mind blowing. And you can even go all the way back to Dalen Baldwin if you want. For example, 2021 comes in from Jackson State. He didn't have a great year. I don't remember his stats off the top of my
He
head.
still had like 30 receptions, I think.
Yeah, it was far
As like
better
a wide
than
receiver
Charleston,
4. He was still pretty, yeah.
But I mean, I can understand the hesitation with these mid-major. I don't, it's not mid-major, but it's FCS, I guess, is what you would call it. FCS transfer wide receivers. I mean, it just hasn't worked out well for Michigan. And you got to hope that some of these guys can really step up. I mean, you saw Peyton O'Leary make that catch against Ohio State last year with that tremendously improved their odds of winning and they're in Columbus in November. But I mean, that's 1 catch for Peyton O'Leary, right? He's got 1 catch to hang his hat on, plus a really good spring game a couple of years ago, and then really nothing else. And that's how it is for a lot of these guys. Semaj Morgan had a really solid freshman year with JJ as his quarterback, and then, like you mentioned, wasn't used the right way, didn't really put up the same numbers as a sophomore. It's a lot of this from these Michigan wide receivers, and they're going to have to find someone that can step up alongside. Assuming McCulley is the number 1 guy, they're going to need, like you said, at least 1 more to be a solid threat for Underwood and this offense. But
Consistently.
Right. Consistently. Yes. Consistently, because 1 catch in 1 game sometime isn't going to cut it. I mean, you're going to need a guy who can go out and get you, I don't know, 5 receptions for 70 yards a game, something like that. So that's what they need. And I don't know. We've speculated all off season about who that guy could be, and at this point, it's just kind of wait and see. I feel like until they roll the ball out, and someone's gonna have to step up.
I just hope they settle in on a few, and I just don't want to see the position over rotated. That was my big complaint last year. And then Kendrick Bell was leading in snaps but not getting targets. And to your point, it's not that Peyton O'Leary can't make a play, but is he out there making plays over and over again? Right? Who's that guy going to be? I do think McCulley can be there. Cut from a different cloth. You can't blame the wide receivers. The QBs were the worst and couldn't consistently pass for the entire game. I mean, that's part of it. We've talked about this ecosystem of O-line, play calling, like chicken or the egg, which came first, what improves. Like, I do think it's fair. Like, we're willing to give Semaj another chance because of, again, the play calling, the usage didn't make a ton of sense. I'm with you, but there's still unknowns, right? Like, I know Fred Moore's fast. I told you, I thought Fred Moore was the best wide receiver on the team last year.
Yep.
And we didn't get a chance to see it. Can he be consistent with his hands? Can he be a crisp enough route runner? Right? Shannon Goodwin seems like might be in that 4 debate, a guy that could creep in and take the next step. Can he be a guy that's consistent and explosive? Like, we know that's what the coaches want. It's that explosiveness, but can you do it consistently?
Yeah.
And Michigan hasn't had that in a while. And I think the other piece to your point is something Bryce can count on, right? JJ had, first it was Ronnie Bell, and then it was Roman Wilson. Yeah. And both of those guys excelled at reacting to what JJ was doing in the pocket and finding the gaps in the defense, giving him a target to throw to on broken plays. I think that's going to be a huge piece. And I've lost the comment now. Hogan Hansen. I think this as well. I think Hansen's probably going to be the number 2 guy, especially lining up in the slot. Marlin, Klein, they've got a lot of tight ends there that could offset. The running backs can be involved in the passing game. So McCulley can be that guy, especially on the 3rd and longs and the intermediate routes. If you can find a deep threat, then the ceiling on this offense gets massive. But I want to see the occasional rotation at wide receiver. I don't want Bryce to go out there and look around and be like, wait, who's out here with me? Right? Because I think there's some comfort, especially for a freshman, where if he knows number 1 is here and number 14 is here or number 3, whatever. But we'll see if, maybe Simpson pushes for some reps in the slot there, but I don't know. I didn't really understand that addition at the time either. So
Yeah.
but,
I was laughing at really quick before we move on. I was laughing at your average fans comment. Bell's biggest play last year was an incomplete pass, which I think is
which play was
funny but true. The Ohio State game, that trick play when they ran that end around to Kendrick
oh my
Bell,
God, that's right.
Threw it down the field and there was pass interference. He threw it to Tyler Morris, I think, but it's true. I mean, that was his biggest play of the year, and that's just how it's been for Michigan's wide receiver room. You brought up Fred Moore. He's a perfect example. He had a great game in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Alabama, but earlier in the season, may have been the Texas game or something. Fred Moore ran that deep post route.
First game of the year.
At Fresno State, and it got picked off. And Sherrone Moore ripped him for it, and he was in the doghouse for the entire season. So he's a perfect example of a guy who fits what we're talking about, where, he makes a mistake here that puts him in the doghouse, and then he comes back and has a really nice game, but it's got to be more consistent.
Yeah. And back to, I don't remember who said it. I apologize, but the previous point, QB play has got to be consistent too, right? Mm-hmm. And I've talked about the all curls and just some of the terrible play calls too. I think it's a crapshoot. It's so hard for us to fully judge what's there, but there's just not. We had seen Cornelius Johnson have a couple good years, going into the end. Like, you felt like you knew what you had with him. You had a reason to think. Even Roman's floor, before he had his breakout year, he had 2 really good years. Like, you knew what he was going to be. I mean, you're talking about all these guys had single-digit receptions last year. So I believe in the potential of a lot of them. Got to see it happen. And I'll tell you, a lot of recruits are watching too. Like, they're talking to some big-time 4- and 5-star wide receiver recruits. They want to see what happens on the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little defense. I think the story post-spring was probably that Rod Moore jogging video. The reaction to that was, I think, kind of shocking. That's what I expected. I mean, we were trying to tell folks, like, hey, he hasn't been running yet. Before that video came out, we were told, like, hey, this is what he's going to do in May, June. We expect him to be full contact by July. That's still the plan. It's tough to operate with the assumption Rod Moore is going to be out there. And then also the question, what kind of Rod Moore are you getting? I think his leadership void was as big as his football playing void last year. Having him out there I know he was doing it from the sideline in the practice. I mean, we heard over and over again what a great teammate he was being. It's different than Rod Moore being on the field and calling out where guys need to be and things like that. So I want him on the field. I think that takes his defense to another level. But are you just like, if he ends up playing cool, not really counting him into the rotation, or where are you at with your? I mean, I have to believe the things we've been hearing, but again, he's had a rough go, man. A couple surgeries, and it's been tough.
To be honest, I am much more on the spectrum of, if he's able to play, then great, than I am expecting him to be out there starting against New Mexico week 1. I mean, like you said, we heard all about how he was having a slow recovery and how he still wasn't running. But here we are, less than 100 days away from kickoff, and he just recently started running on ground for the first time. And I think he said 15 months. I just struggle to believe. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how the human body works in terms of recovery and things like that, but I really struggle to believe that he's going to go in 100-ish days, going from running on ground for the first time in 14 months to being able to play college football in that short of a time frame. I just struggle to believe it. If it happens, then great. It's going to work out really well for Michigan, because we know the kind of player that Rod Moore is. I don't think personally he's going to be ready for week 1 based on that video, based on the fact that, what's his conditioning like? There's a lot that goes into being ready to play football other than just how's your knee doing, right? He's got to be conditioned. if he hasn't run on ground in 14 months, I do have questions about his conditioning, right? And that's going to have to be something that the staff looks at. How's, his strength in his legs. There's a whole lot that goes into it other than just being healthy. And so I personally am not expecting him to be ready to go. And it's tough for him, but that's just personally where I'm at.
Yeah, it could be limited snaps early too. Like maybe he gets
Yeah.
worked into it. I don't know. It's a group I'm not overly concerned with. I'm really excited about Brandon Hillman. People have been asking about the yeah, correct. Yep. Josh reported that really on that it had a complications, not fair either. It wasn't the same ACL. It was almost like a different injury. It wasn't anyway, I don't want to get into it too much. We don't like it's not our business, but anyway, he did the first surgery take the wrong knee? No. Again, yeah, just had a second operation. I like Hillman. People were asking about the nickel position. I do think TJ Metcalf is the guy there in terms of the regular nickel and a guy that can kind of operate back into safety. We've heard about Mason Curtis being in at slot corner. Kwame's right. You're saying, is he twitchy enough? Wink discovered something last year when they put Makari Page there. The big nickel, right?
Yeah.
I think they like the flexibility of having a guy like Curtis be able to do that. And then Zeke Berry could still end up there too, along with his outside corner reps. And Jair Hill's there. And we know we've talked about Shamari Earls. And a lot of that group is largely the same. It's just, can Rod Moore get plugged in? And then you've also got, I think that's probably the spot where the most freshmen are arriving because Elijah Dotson's coming in. Sanders, TJ Sanders, more of a corner. He's coming in. And then Winston. All three are coming in the summer. And those are three guys that once they get to practice and be around the team, I think they can find some snaps as well. And moving forward will be a big piece of the team. So there's guys there. But that TJ's brother Tevis had a really good spring as well. He'll be a part of the cornerback rotation too. So I think the previous transfer portal ads, some recruiting kind of coming up now for you. They're in a good spot. And if Rod Moore's there, then that's just gravy, man.
Yeah, I agree. The pieces are there for, the Michigan defense is going to be elite pretty much no matter what. The pieces are all there for this defense to be elite, but we've all seen how important Rod Moore is. Like we've all talked about, this is a guy who was out there playing against Ohio State as a true freshman in 2021, playing meaningful snaps. He's been around for that long, 21, 22, 23, sits out 2024. But like you brought up, the coaches or the players were talking about all season long how great of a coach he was. Coach Rod, right? That's what he was called. And, the interception against Ohio State in 2023, he's been around for some of the biggest moments that this program has had in recent years. And his leadership, we know him being a captain last year speaks volumes to the kind of person he is, right? So his leadership, regardless of his health status, is going to be huge.
And he's really the last big connection to that previous era. I think Derek Moore you can put in the conversation as well, but he obviously didn't play as much as Rod Moore did. So whatever he's able to contribute, you hope for the best. The guy had a bright NFL future in front of him after being a 3-star recruit that Ohio State ignored. One of the many Ohio guys that were happy to come here and beat Ohio State, right? The only other position group I want to talk about was defensive line because we know it's deep. We were talking about it at the spring game and just leading into it. You're like, man, we could see 6 edge. We could see 6 defensive tackles. Anoeta's gone from breakout to, is he DT 6 or 7 because of the transfers that have come in and, Ike and Trey Pierce and whatever. It's a deep group. And then you add Nate Marshall, who was our number 1 rated edge player in the class, and Benny Patterson, a sleeper DT guy. So that's, again, back to the Etta debate. I'm like, well, I've got Pale, and I've got Manuel, and I've got Travis Moten as a freshman, and now I'm bringing in Ben. Like, there are so many guys on that position or in that group in the defensive line. People are really excited about Lou as a coach. Is that the best position group on this team? The defensive front, whether you want to do edge and defensive tackle separate, I don't know, but like that feels like the best group on the team.
You could argue that for sure. I mean, it would be honestly, it'd be pretty close to the best position group on the team, even without Trey Williams and Damon Payne. And you bring those two guys in, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it's certainly, in my opinion, the most deep. It's got to be the most deep group on the team. Is it the best? It could be. It's right up there. And it's crazy to think that Michigan still has this sort of depth and talent even after losing Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. It's wild to think about. I mean, it's really crazy, and it's a huge credit to Lou Esposito. I mean, he's knocked it out of the park ever since he's arrived, and so
yeah.
I'm really excited to see what that group's going to do this year. But yeah, bringing in Payne and Williams is just huge for that group, and having two older guys that these sort of younger guys can learn from and be mentored by before they take over next year is just, it's going to be massive.
Yeah, then with Benny, 3 fifth-year guys up front.
Yeah, exactly. Rachel and Benny. Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And Derek Moore is a senior, and TJ Guy's back for a 5th year. And then after that, yeah, I brought up Baxter Lugard Adekpai. Keep messing that up. I am obsessed with his potential.
Mm-hmm.
And Barham might get reps over there. We still have Cam Brandt, and I know I'm forgetting other names because there just are. There's so many names. And then Julius Holly coming in, Nate Marshall coming in. Like, that group's set for this year for sure. And yeah, you're right. The 21 comp is just so obvious to me. You lose Hutch and Ajabo. There's not a Mason Graham on this roster, I don't think. I don't think there's a Kenneth Grant on this roster, but those guys don't have to play 60 snaps this year. They're going to be able to rotate that spot without as much drop off. And I think that's going to be huge for Wake and how he wants to run his defense and the adjustments he makes going into the year 2 as well. So, all right, that's kind of the newest things. Let's wrap up with what we've talked about. What do you think is most important for the ceiling of this team in 25? What position battle, or what, aside from Bryce is obvious.
Yeah.
What's going to be the spot that really determines whether we're talking about a 10-2 playoff team, Big Ten contender, or like last year, a team that loses some games they shouldn't?
It's got to be, for me, either wide receiver or offensive line. And just because of, like you said, obviously the answer would be Bryce Underwood. He's the correct answer. But if we're going outside of him, it's got to be the guys who are going to be impacting his level of play the most. And that's going to be the wide receivers and the offensive linemen. You talked about this earlier, this ecosystem of Michigan's offense just being terrible last year, and how it was literally play calling, offensive line, quarterback, wide receivers. They were all held accountable for the offense. I mean, they didn't even complete a pass longer than 40 yards last year. Their longest pass play was 34 yards or something like that.
That's insane.
And it is. It really is.
And you could even luck into one.
Right. It was that bad. And so, Michigan, it's going to be, if I had to pick one, I'd probably say the wide receivers, just because, like we talked about earlier, Michigan, I think they're comfortable having 3 guys penciled in as starters along the offensive line. I don't think there's too much more to figure out there. But, I mean, the wide receivers, like we talked about, is just, it could be anyone. And no one seems to really have any idea outside of Donaven McCulley what that's going to look like. So, just getting guys that can consistently step up there is going to be huge. I mean, you can have a talented quarterback in Bryce Underwood, but if he doesn't have any faith in his wide receivers, it's going to impact his play. And it's going to be critical that Michigan can develop these wide receivers to have Underwood have his trust put in them, right? He's throwing them the ball. He better have trust in the guys that they're going to be able to run the routes the right way, be able to catch the ball, things of that sort. So if it were me, I'd have to go wide receiver.
I think I'm buying into the McCulley hype. And again, I to be clear, he has a what if question too, because his deep numbers were not impressive in terms of the 20 yards or further. But you could make the argument too that was in 2023 at Indiana. I think Sorsby was his quarterback, right? So if he has better quarterback play, is he a better deep threat? I don't know if he is or not, and I don't actually know if I need him to be. I really like what he does across the middle and the intermediate routes. I like what he can do on 3rd and long, where Michigan really struggled last year. And just being that guy that runs a quick dig route, catches it, and gets upfield for a few more yards. Like, if that's all he does, like, I'll take it. Talked about, I thought he could lead in receptions, but not yards this year, potentially, depending on how they use him. I think he's better than Tyler Morris, so that feels like already a step up for me in terms of the potential. And I just, somebody of Fred Moore and Goodwin and Morgan and Marsh and Browder and somebody from that group has got to step up. And it's funny because, with no Loveland, we should be more worried about tight end, maybe, because as good as Hogan Hansen can be and will be, in my opinion, I mean, Loveland was the best tight end in the country, right? So I'm with you. It makes a lot of sense to pick the pass catchers. And you might have talked me into this because I do feel good about who they have on the offensive line already. Left tackle is just so crucial.
It is.
It's just so crucial, though. And I want Babelo to win that job. We talked about last year when Link won right tackle. It's like, well, if a redshirt freshman is beating out, Gentry, who's a former top 150 recruit, who's been in the program for a couple of years, if Link's beating him out, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And then it felt like maybe Gentry should have been starting from the beginning, and it's like, oh no, right? So I want Babelo to win outright. I think that would be the best outcome for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I have faith in Link there, but if he's starting there, then that feels like, doesn't that feel like it'd be by default almost?
Yeah. Yeah. It would.
I mean, maybe they're just trying to push him. Maybe that's part of it too. And maybe it's pushing him in the summer and then he takes another leap and really secures that starting spot. We don't know what the motivation between some of the comments. But yeah, no, I know, Kwame, that's we've talked about that and then Crippen was injured for a week and basically gave Dom the job too. I don't think that mistake's going to get made again personally, but we'll see. I don't know. You might have talked me into wide receiver just because they feel good about the rest of the offensive line. I like Sprague. I like Crippen, El Hadi there. And there's so many names at right guard that spot's got to be good too, probably. Right. Like,
if you had to ask me about a certain position on the offense, I'd say left tackle. But in terms of position group, I'd have to go wide receiver. I'd have to.
You making me choose my words wisely. See, I left the door open. All right, so position is left tackle, position group is wide receiver.
That's what I would go with.
That's fair. Yeah. I agree with that. All right. Okay, so lots and lots of things happening and coming down the pipeline. It's Monday, which feels weird, but like I said, Wednesday we'll have Who's Got Next on this channel, so make sure like, subscribe, notification bell. We are doing a weird 10 a.m. time, but that's what happens when your recruiting insider lives in Australia. So we're going to make that work. But obviously, if you don't catch it live, it'll be on playback. Hoping to make that like a 20-minute show. That's not going to be a hangout hour-long session like this one typically is. Just kind of get you caught up in recruiting. Again, you can always get caught up on recruiting at michigan.rivals.com. All of the intel is over there. We'll be back Sunday with another Hail to the podcast. It's waiting on Yaxel at this point, I think, with basketball. That continues to be everybody reading into every little interview piece they find about him, or every scouting report or mock draft. What will Yaxel do? That's kind of the last little waiting piece there for what could be a really, really, really good basketball. I think they're going to be really good anyway, but Yaxel, yikes, man, that puts him into Final Four conversation, right? Like top 10 team for sure.
Preseason top 5 in my opinion, with
If Yaxel comes back, or not comes back, but sticks, that'd be sick. And look, we're gonna start getting into it with the football, the deep dives and the analysis and all that fun premium content stuff. So again, make sure you're following us over at michigan.rivals.com to get access to that. And then July 1, that's going to be the flip over. That's when we will launch on the On3 platform. And then again, just for those that, if there's any confusion, you're going to have access. On3 and Rivals have become one at a national level. So On3 will continue at a national level to be the landing spot for college sports coverage, NIL, transfer portal, the things they've really kind of dominated, frankly, because when they launched, that was their priority, and Rivals and 24/7 weren't really set up for that coverage. And Rivals will once again become the home for high school recruiting. All of the recruiting rankings will be at the Rival site. They won't be on 3 anymore. And again, this is at a national level. So folks that cover recruiting nationally for On3 will probably start being branded Rivals and vice versa, potentially. But Maize Blue Review, as a fan site, will give you access to both of those platforms. And we will continue to operate independently. There's not any sort of collaborating beyond that. So if you're a subscriber to us, you just got better because of the access to the On3 and the Rivals National. Again, July 1, we expect that to happen. I don't know if there's going to be a different how the website's going to, how that's going to work. I'm sure Michigan.Rivals will forward for a little while, but we will continue to provide updates on that as they come. And again, if you're not following the Godfather himself, Shannon Terry, on Twitter, he's been very candid, posting the updates as soon as he gets them. So if you want to know what's going on with that, he's been really candid. Good follow to keep tabs on 3 and Rivals. Steve almost let us get out of here without a Circuit City reference, but there you go. Used to hostile takeovers. Circuit City, when they tried to take Montgomery Ward, I wasn't with them when that happened. Montgomery Ward, what is that? Do I know that? I don't know. Have I ever told the Circuit City when they went out of business story, though?
I don't think so.
That was crazy. So they'd already filed for, Chapter 11, and we're in the process of trying to figure it out, right? When you're a retailer, you have so much debt because all the products on your shelf, you pretty much bought with credit, right? Mm. So Circuit City owed Samsung, HP, Panasonic, whoever, all this money. So anybody that was going to invest and potentially buy Circuit City, well, you probably had to pay this debt off first too, right? So we thought the night before this final court hearing that there was a deal in place. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the number one owner of retail in Mexico, was going to buy Circuit City and hey, our jobs are safe. Everything's cool. And then the next day we're following along. This is 07, 08. So we're trying to follow along on Google, what's happening. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the deal's in flux. We don't know what's going on. We don't hear anything from corporate. And then all of a sudden it comes out, the deal fell through. Circuit City's liquidating. They're closing all their stores. And we're like, wow, is this really happening? This is real. When I tell you within 10 minutes, the dude with the signs, the 10% off, everything must go, store closing, all that signage, guy walks in the building with it. He was ready to go. They just had to push the go button.
Wow.
With him is the guy that stands on the road, spinning the sign, right? We haven't heard from anyone yet what's going on, but other than watching online, and he's in the building like that. All right, here's the signage. Start putting it up. All this stuff is being sold at a markdown. None of your sale prices are valid anymore. Blah, blah. It was crazy. It was crazy. But Montgomery Ward, I know you don't know what that is.
No idea.
If I, no offense, but if I don't know. Just kidding. All right. Brock, awesome job as always, man. Appreciate you coming in here. All of you folks, Memorial Day, holiday weekend, thank you for coming in. Sorry we were a day late. Again, after I promised we wouldn't be, I didn't think about the holiday. That's my bad. Hopefully we're back again next week with the three of us, with Josh here live Sunday at 7. If not, again, subscribing, doing the notification bell is the best way to keep tabs on when we do go live, whether it's us, Dennis, or again, myself and Aiden on Wednesday to talk recruiting. So other than that, hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks as always.